also that he said, they either are not paying the taxes or they're not paying the comp, or maybe both. But when we're educating our clients, we also have to educate them not just how they can verify the comp, but how can they verify the tax part. Is they should be asking for a W-9. We need to make sure that they are, right? One of the things that we also need to make sure is that we're telling our clients, you can look if they're a registered LLC, right? And exactly, and those are some of the things that honestly I think are the biggest challenges for us right now in the current times that we're facing. Is there's a lot of mom and pop shops that are like not even putting their name outside of the building. You just see jobs, trabajos, and they're gone 3 months later, and then we're there carrying the bag. And if you're a dinosaur staffer like me, which most of you look young, so I doubt it, but you remember probably the tri-state days when everybody was running around trying to figure out because they were getting bills from the IRS and Uncle Sam was ready to collect from those companies. And maybe those are some of the examples that we can use, I don't believe in throwing our competitors under the bus, but I also believe that our clients also don't understand that employee who they have a good relationship with, they probably go to barbecues for their family with, is going to be affected if that staffing service does not pay them, because there's times when they have bounced checks. There's times when they don't have medical coverage, or there's times when they're gonna have to let them go because they have another bill for that bill that they already paid that invoice on. So I know that it was originally my question that I just ended up answering, but it's also my frustration because I live it every single day and I have for the last 10 years. And I think that until we start trying to educate our clients to stop signing on those agencies, is it gonna stop? Because I think that we're working way too hard and just spinning our wheels, and we want to continue to see this industry that we've grown up with flourish. And sometimes it's not about throwing our competitors under the bus. I honestly don't think that that's what it is, but it's also about making sure that we still exist next year and the year after.
Don't forget reference checks either.
And just one thing real quick. Yeah, I mean, as far as throwing the competitors under the bus, you won't even have to, because at some point, if a company's doing that, they're going to throw themselves under the bus. It's a matter of how long they plan on being around. And you get those competitors where they're here for a couple of years because they're gonna escape it for a couple of years, and they might be able to, and they won't pay their payroll taxes, they won't pay their white workers' comp, they might try to avoid an audit and submit everything under 8810 instead of 8018, and the clerical code is obviously significantly cheaper than another code. At some point it's going to catch up, and it's going to catch up quick, and the carriers are getting smarter with it. The carriers are taking a beating from it. They're not going to wait around like they used to. And the audits are going to come, and they're going to owe money, and they're going to be out of business. So, there's no great answer to it, but the more you can educate the client and explain to them that, do you really want to work with another staffing company that's going to put you at risk in your business and all your assets that you've built over the last 30 years to save a couple points? And if you do, then we're not the right fit anyway. Yeah, question.
Is there any way that if a client works with a staffing agency,
if a client works with a staffing agency that is maybe putting in wrong codes or not having proper insurance, and that staffing agency gets audited or something happens, could that client have any legal repercussions, or are they tied in at any point that could affect them?
Yeah, so, and that end, yes. What happens is that oftentimes the client that hired the staffing agency, they are held responsible because you guys are pretty much like contractors. The way you guys, your contracts, as I insure contractors as well, it's the same thing. You hire on the vendor, and that's a co-employment. So when the client hires the staffing agency, they are held accountable, like, hey, I'm bringing this person in, you sign, the staffing agency signs off the contract saying, yes, I'm going to be held liable, and if anything were to happen, I'm going to make you full. But if that person does not have insurance, then that goes back into the client, and now the client is held wholly responsible for that. So it's happened in many situations where a client has brought in a staffing agency and they were not insured or not properly insured. It happens at restaurants, warehouses, and now they're stuck with an EPLI claim, a workers' comp claim, and it gets messy because now the client can no longer go after the staffing agency because they were never insured, or that staffing agency decides to change names and now there's someone else. What happens is that they dissolve it. And it's unfortunate, just like Vanessa was saying. I think there is a change, but I also believe that this change needs to come from our state and our government. And the way that the California regulates contractors, they should be regulating staffing agencies. They should be collecting a certificate of insurance every year to verify workers' comp, GL, and make sure that this person's legitimate. And they need to, I feel like that's a stand that the state and the government needs to do.
It's not on.
Is that on? Okay. What you guys are talking about is a beautiful segue into something I was just thinking about. Why the PAC is so important, because companies are trying to survive and they're cutting corners and they're making deals that they should be making, and they're entertaining stuff that maybe they wouldn't have done in the past. So it's the state that's creating this, and we have to fix it, and the PAC is going to help that. So it just proves that this is all tied together. That's all.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement because it's really frustrating. It's frustrating it's seeing the corruption that's going on, seeing how easy it is for someone to get away with it. Like you guys have seen, there's companies that come up, rebuild, close it down, do it again, and it's just continuous. It's not until someone makes it up, they've done corruption of millions of dollars in the IRS and goes, okay, let me tap into that. Or they messed up on the claim and somehow that cat got out of the bag and they're like, okay, well, we gotta kind of fix this and show that we care. But I'm in total agreement with the state and the government making a change for this.
Until then, though, it's really up to us. Until then, we have to start doing things right ourselves first and educate our clients, right? And I think it's making sure that we do have the right processes, procedures, insurance that we carry, and also treat people as people, right? Because at the end of the day, that co-employment is somehow somebody's going to pay for it, whether that be you or your client. And so it really is a true partnership. And when I say a true partnership, I partner with a lot of CEOs and business owners. They got to hear the hard truth. And sometimes those difficult conversations are difficult to have, but they gotta have it. We have to have it because a true partner will call it out, right? And sometimes we don't. We just need to educate, and that means this is what you need to ask that agency for. I am going to be a true partner with you. This is what I can show you and prove to you today. I would really encourage you to ask the same for that other agency because that's where the relationships start from the get-go. Once you have that type of conversation with that potential client, and the client said, wow, you were right, trust me, your word is huge. Now you really have a true partner. You're looking out for each other, right? And that means they're going to be open to your suggestions. You're going to be open to their suggestions. And therefore, that's what a true partnership is all about. We have the best at heart for each other. And that in California, it's not only financially, but it's so many different other areas that can affect us, right? So the whistleblower, we're in this together. It can happen to any of us, right? That's why doing things right from the get-go, even though it's painful and costly, is the way to do it. It really is. We just got to be smart enough to budget in, be forthcoming, showcase exactly what we're doing right, and educate our clients and partners, right? Yes. So, did you have a question?
No, it was just more of a follow-up comment, because what you're saying definitely resonates, I think, with the entire room, and especially about being in front of a customer that you're competing against a market that you know is not legitimate. Good news, bad news, as far as what we're seeing, is that, one, the state of California, to your point, they're bad at a lot of things, but they're not going to be stuck holding the bill. So if an end user customer thinks, oh, eventually it'll go to the uninsured fund or somewhere, someone else is going to pick up this tab, I'm not going to be it. If the staffing company that they were utilizing didn't have proper workers' comp coverage, no, they will go back to that end user customer. The good news that I was highlighting is that we are seeing actual results in the jurisdictional courts where they are bringing those customers in. They are coming up with real precedent that is being set that now you can refer those prospects to. to say, look, this isn't just an empty threat. This is actually happening. And there's now cases that are public information that you could refer back to. The bad news is that there's the risk of it still having a negative connotation back to the staffing industry. So like, to your point, we all love staffing, that's why we're in this room. For every time that you say, look, there's precedent being set because of this bad staffing company, you have to also temper that with what a good staffing company does. And so I just, the only reason I was bringing this up, and I could talk about this for hours with you guys, but is there actually is results happening now where the end user customers are starting to feel that pain and it's making a difference.
Well, it's not just on that particular type of scenario, workers' comp, but we've seen the changes through PAGA, right? All these different kinds of litigation. It is coming forward. There's been a movement of some changes, but we're a long way from perfection. So until we get there, obviously all of our voices matter and count, but until we get there, we have to be strategic about what is the best outcome for us, them, and how can we move forward together until that gets accomplished. Because it's not going to be a year, it's going to be several years before that change is over. But at least we see a little bit of a light at the end of that tunnel, right? It's just barely coming through, but there is a lot of opportunities. But it really starts with a partnership and education and being forthcoming and really making sure that we're doing our stuff good, right? I'm ready, I can show you. Let me show you what I can tell you and prove to you. Now, I'm asking you to do the same thing for the other prospect that you're considering, right? Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the audits, definitely insurance carriers are getting very strict on who they write, and they are even going to an extent, because like I said, there's a lot of companies that have the same ownership. If they see that same common ownership or that name, they are going to deny it. So like, no, I don't want to do anything with that because of that reputation. And with that also, there's a lot of, unfortunately, it's kind of like the whammy with the insurance, right? As the insurance are getting more strict about it, insurance rates are going up more, premiums are going up because they're covering a lot of claims that are uninsured. So that's kind of like the bad side of it.
So, over the years, customers have become much smarter. So what they do now is try to eliminate their own risk. So as a result of this, they write their own contracts, and in these contracts they put indemnity agreements, right? And oftentimes staffing companies, they receive these contracts, especially customer-generated contracts that carry some 20, 30, 40, we saw a contract 58 pages, right? And we oftentimes don't read it, and we sign it off. In the meantime, what happens, we're signing off on these indemnities that are so risky, and it's a matter of time when we get hooked on it badly, you know. So my thought is, we have to really read these contracts very carefully, right? Very, very carefully. And I wonder if the insurance companies are looking at these contracts as well, and based on this, they providing their own quotes, or they say, hey, we don't want to have anything to do with that because the risk is just too high.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was actually getting into the whole contractual part of it. That was perfect, but that is a major issue. And what we're seeing a lot of now is the limits are being requested higher than ever before. They're asking you to identify the client company for any and all. If you see that any and all verbiage on the contract, run, or at least try to negotiate that into more mutually beneficial, because we're seeing that all day long now. It's contracts are coming in, and we review contracts as well as brokers for our insurance, and to say, hey, maybe cross out that language and see if they can work at some sort of mutual agreement, because you're partners in that business. Do you really want to take on and identify your client company for any and all claims that could arise? And I mean, all they're doing is, that's a client company that's saying, I want to offload my risk and put it all on you. And somebody's got, when a claim happens, someone's paying for it. Yeah. So that's a great point. It's a serious problem in our market today. I've seen limits, $15, $20 million requests from companies. For you to go buy a $15 or $10 million umbrella, which may not even happen in today's world with the way the liability marketplace is, you're going to spend a ton of money. So, and then that's the same client that wants you to provide a 28% markup. So it's, you know, someone's got to pay for that. It's not possible. And I hate to sound like a broken record because we all want to grow. We want you to get more clients. But the reality is there are probably clients you just don't want to work with. And it's hard to make that decision. It's hard to walk away from it when the revenue's there. But, you know, revenue is one thing, but your EBITDA is also another thing that's extremely important. So it's balancing that out, and there's no great answer to that. I think the best way to do it is, I always say to our salespeople when we're talking about sales is, facts tell, stories sell. So providing stories about what you've seen in the past and what you've heard from your broker, and I can tell you stories where, storytelling where, you know, a company was working with another PEO or EOR and they went out of business, and that client company is now brought into the claim as well, and someone has to pay it. And typically it's going to fall on whatever your contract language is. And if your contract language is indemnifying that client, you're on the hook for that. So it's a really serious issue. It's a problem that I don't know what the answer is. I think Fortino, you know, he's right in the sense of that we have to push back. We have to grow this pack. We have to go to our legislators and push this. We've been up there with Fortino before pushing on this. You know, it takes a while, but we have to be that squeaky wheel. Because at the same time, you know, we can do everything we can to protect ourselves, but you cannot stop the fraud, and you cannot stop these types of ridiculous requests from your clients. You have a question over there?
Yeah, just a kind of question on that, like the co-employment. So somebody gets injured on the job as a temp. Let's just say everything is kosher, like the staffing agency, you know, has the right insurance. They cover that. Does that insurance though, or does the injury also go on the client's mod at all? Because it happened on their site.
You're talking specifically workers' comp?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the answer is no. It would be on the staffing company, it's their employee. It's the employer of record of the employee, which is the staffing company.
Okay.
Now, if the issue was like a bad machine or something like that, would that?
So that, I guess, yeah, and we could get into that, but we might put you to sleep. But it's called a third-party action overclaim, which could be potential if there's negligence on the client company for not having like a guard on a machine and then it injures the employee, your employee. There's a lot of nuance to that, and it gets complicated, but the reality is that you want to look at it as your co-employers. You both manage that employee, and responsibility will definitely fall on you.
Just it's a great suggestion, which I noticed you briefly touched on. Audits, on-site audits, essential to mitigate risk for your employees that are on that building, on that location, right? And we can literally talk auditing quite a lot of processes, right? If you have wage and hour, your timekeeping system, at least on an annual basis, somebody needs to go in there and actually assess, are they taking 30 minutes break? Are they taking their 10-minute break? Are they punching in and out? Are we paying timely, accurately, by the minute? No rounding, right? Those audits are essential, especially when it comes to PAGA, right? Because the law just changed almost a year ago. And if you continuously, at least once a year, maybe biannually, auditing all your locations, if you get a PAGA, that will totally reduce your costs if we have to litigate that, right? So auditing becomes so important more than before from a risk perspective with workers' compensation, mitigating and be proactive as possible, and wage and hour as well. I mean, we can talk about audits in every human capital function that there is, right? But those are your biggest hitters, right? They will hit you huge. Leave of absences as well. Like, what is the right process? How are we managing that process at our locations, right? Are we providing the right information timely? We were just talking about a situation for one of my clients this week. For a leave of absence, they did everything right, and their attorney, employer attorney of the client, of my client, that's going to cost you $1 million for one person. I'm like, absolutely, there's no way we can prove we've done everything right, right? EPLI insurance. Let's make sure we get that updated. Let's make sure it's currently an active insurance, because things like that happen, right? And the opportunity to audit yourself, be as proactively as possible, is to hope that your attorney can mitigate the high risk, right? That's just an opportunity for us to argue the facts. Now we're doing this right.
So to kind of conclude, I think we can